Hi all, I had quite a neat game the other night playing in Herts League against D.Robinson, so Barnet against Stevenage came to us. I was playing black on board 3. We were without John Pigott actually, so it was me and Nicholson and Genghis was on 1, so I was on board 3 for Barnet. So he's 164, so I'm higher rated, and I decided to play a King's Engine defence. We were playing the longer version of the time limit. You can choose which time limit. So you can either have all the moves on the night, or you can play adjournment or adjudication. And in this day and age, of course, that means engines could get involved in analysis. You know, after move 35, if a move gets sealed, and you might have to end up doing lots of analysis potentially. So ideally, I wanted to try and win relatively quickly before move 35. So anyway. Even with the King's Engine, the thing about the King's Engine from that point of view of trying to win before the engines kick in and we end up in this sort of loads of analysis thing and play on again and again. So the thing about the King's Engine, it's a slow build up though, and you have to accept that in the mainline classical King's Engine, you're going to have to slowly sometimes prepare a line opening. And I was just hoping, when is the line going to be open? I was counting the moves. So we go into the mainline King's Engine, and it's sort of reminiscent of that 5-minute Blitz game recently, the one called A Beautifully Flowing King's Engine Defence. He just played the sort of classic mainline, which I'm not sure if it's still that popular actually. I thought, the bayonet attack is very popular after 97 to play B4. Or there's other ideas as well, like after 91 to play Bishop D2, but he played like the old main line, which basically provides black with a tempo gain because the bishop moves to E3. So I want to play often F5, F4. It's going to be with tempo. Sure, the bishop will go to F2 usually, but I think my good friend Paul Georgie was saying that the style of these King's Engines did change and were influenced by some key games where black, was often smashing through later with a kind of G3 pawn sack on G3. So even on F2, it's still a tempo gainer, this bishop, once you play like a thematic pawn sack later, and you get access to dark squares in white's position. So really, I suppose you could say it's a dark square strategy combined with trying to go for the king. So I play F5, knowing I'm going to get a tempo gain. He plays F3. So actually, this might not be that accurate. I remember doing an analysis with, I think David Coleman was saying you have to wait for knight F6 before you play F3, and there might be a reason for that. That King H8, Knight G8, Bishop H6. Again, a dark square strategy. It's trying to exchange off this bishop or leave this bishop on this great diagonal. It could be really dangerous later. That sort of strategy might be implied, but no, I wanted to actually lock up the position with F4, but I was wondering how long is this going to take to open up the G file, and there were some other critical decisions now, and really I was envisaging a fast infiltration from white with rook C1, C5, CD, get the knight in quickly to C7, either to win the exchange or to play knight E6. I thought that's the basic idea, which I kind of mentioned to my opponent after the game, because often white's strategy is if he can get rid of this light square bishop, then the play on the light squares and the C file is going to be much easier, and more time is going to be given for it, because white's going to be the king is going to be safer without this light square bishop, because often this bishop isn't that dangerous, so it's this one which is the danger bishop. So this infiltration needs to be quite quick into the C7 square, but we see here an illustration, if white's a bit too casual on the queen's side, I'm getting my line opening, and all he's going to be left with is only an opportunity to try and hijack the G file if his C file is not really going to bear any fruit in terms of infiltration. So I'm conscious already actually that their board 1 got a game off me, like I think a season or two ago, hijacking the G file, approaching move 35. So I was being a bit concerned about going into the computer adjournments, And I don't know if there was a video of that game against their board 1 where I opened up another front instead of playing in the centre. So I was a bit conscious actually, even at this stage, that even if he is casual on the queen side and I'm going to open the G file, is it going to be hijacked later? Okay, so B4, knight F6. Finally, he does play C5, as though CD is definitely on the cards. And I did wonder about A6, and I think an engine suggestion at this point might actually be A6 here, and it actually favours white quite a lot. I'll just do a quick check, but I think it doesn't really like black's position. A6 is mentioned, as you see, A6 here with an advantage to white. So say A6. So knight D3, and it's giving an advantage to white. But I was actually conscious also of a slight influence here, this German PK Kasparov game where I think Kasparov didn't play A6 until later. He allowed German PK sort of a knight infiltration and even winning A8, and then this queen sort of came out on this diagonal, and the end of the game was the startling knight H1. And there is also a video on that if you want to find that, Kasparov PK. If you do a search, you'll find that I've done a video on that game. So that was a real classic King's Engine game. Kasparov remains to me a major influence, Kasparov and Fischer, in how they handled, the King's Engine defence. Both of those, great world champions, loved the King's Engine. It's a shame that the Slav is so popular, when I think at least at the club level, there's nothing to stop club players playing the King's Engine, but you will get the occasional slaughtering though on the Queen's side. So I was expecting a quicker infiltration in this, to be honest. You just as the King's Engine player, you often expect your Queen side to be demolished, and I was wondering, when are they going to turn up? The demolishers to get into C7. It's like taking ages. Now I'm going to play Rook F7, so I'm supporting C7 now anyway. So he's missed his chance for a major, infiltration already, because I'm getting in my Rook F7. A4, another sort of leisurely pace move, like walk in the park move. I play Bishop F8, so I'm sort of arranging the troops, to open up the G file and just slaughter the white king. It's basically quite a flowing game so far. H5. Now finally, CD. Okay, there's a critical decision here. Do I take with the pawn or the bishop? I thought if I take with the bishop, C5 is more vulnerable actually. If I take with the pawn, C5 is covered. So I take with the pawn. And another leisurely move, again, B5. I'm really thinking, blimey, he's going to have to hijack this G file now. I'm going to open up the G file, and it's going to be really dangerous because we've also got this thematic pawn sack idea on the cards now to speed up things. Take, H4, bishop moves back, and then something like knight H5, and then rook G7, and knight F4 or knight G3, and it's going to be all over on the dark squares. So that's the basic idea. But here he kind of pressed the panic button. He played G3, so he's weakening some key light squares. He's given me access to G4 now to attack his very precious bishop. Remember, this bishop's complementary to the pawn chain, this dark square bishop. So if I can even attack that would be brilliant. And I get the opportunity now. So I take on F3. He takes, and I play knight G4. And if the bishop moves to E1, of course I've got knight E3, forking queen and rook. So I'm getting that very valuable dark square bishop, and engines don't like the way he's played this. Even this recapture, he took with the knight, and apparently taking other ways was better. I think I think it was with the rook probably the best way. Taking with the knight, F3 is a bit vulnerable. I'm recommending either the rook or the queen, but he took actually with the knight, and that really leaves him at a disadvantage tactically, because I simply play FG, and look, there's pressure on the F file now on F3, and now there's going to be pressure on G3 after Queen G5. Note also the Queen's not only attacking G3 but C1, which could be a potential tactical liability if he wants to try and hijack the G file with this rook. This rook's going to be en prise in some variations, and in fact this turns up quite quickly now after King H2. I was wondering if you want to stop the video here, or just use 10 seconds now to see what would you play as black now. So there's a couple of very tempting moves which come to mind, and maybe some other ones, but what would you play as black to try and finish off the game in the best possible manner? So okay, I'll give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay. The move I chose, which I believe is the strongest, is h4, because it's undermining the dark squares even more, these dark squares. Okay, there's a potential hijacking on the g-file, as I mentioned from earlier, because look, lo and behold, his queenside attack hasn't reaped any fruits. There's no infiltration yet. In fact, even his knight's been cut off from going to b5, so this whole knight b5 to c7 concept, so either winning the exchange or a rook, is non-existent. So basically, the point is here, can he take the pawn? I think that would be a major disaster if he takes the pawn. Just check, there's no knight h3. And now just like knight f4, and this is fairly crushing because now we've got rook g7 after the queen moves. So that's unthinkable to do that, to take the pawn. So he plays g4. There's also to look at, there's rook g1, though, rook g1. But here, this is where some good calculation came in. What would I do if rook g1, which wasn't a move played actually? I wonder if you can guess how black would win this. If I just gave you this position here, another 10 seconds, can you see a winning sequence? Not just the next move, but what would be an example key variation to consider here? Okay, so 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, what I calculated is engine verified actually. It does actually work. He would take here, so it's as if that hijacking of the g-files occurred. So, but now there's still punishment because I would play check, force knight h3, and can you guess the move here, which would be winning for black if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay. Clue? Rook takes h3. That would be really crushing. It would force rook takes and then queen takes. Just winning material. There's no hijacking on the g-file. I've just munched a very important rook. I can go back to f4 if needed. It's not good. So basically that variation means that rook g1 is not working. So maybe he rejected rook g1 and he played g4, but that's no better. Here, 10 seconds to find the final move of the game, starting from now. Okay, I just play the check. How can the bishop be defended? If he goes here, I'll play, you guessed it, I hope, queen g3. So here he just resigned. Queen f4, end of game. So it was a bit of a smooth game, 26 moves. I guess there wasn't that much effort on my part. There wasn't much calculation. I ended up looking at the other games for over an hour after this game was finished. My good friend Alex played a very interesting game, which I want to do a video of. He had the white pieces, but so yeah, I mean, I was pleased to win this, but I wasn't that sort of scared of the queenside demolition in this game. It just seemed to be happening just too slowly on the queen side. So okay, which puts a dependency on white to have to try and make use of the lines that the opponent's creating, so, namely the g-file. So g3 is an attempt to do that, to hijack the g-file. That's what basically g3 is. It's saying basically, I'm not going to bother with the queen side anymore. I'm going to just try and make use of files which in principle belong to black, because it's on that side of the board where black has the advantages. You're supposed to play where you have the advantage, and white's supposed to play, you know, on the queen side where they have the advantage. But by playing this move, it's kind of naughty. It's a naughty kind of hijacking move. So I'm glad I was able to sort of calculate a few variations to support you know, what I was doing basically. So basically after knight g4, queen e2, okay, he could have put up a better defense. Unfortunately for him, you know, I just managed to play one or two accurate moves here. So h4, not worrying really. That's the key thing. I think this was the key thing of the whole game. To not worry about rook g1, because it looks coincidental actually. If we argue this rationally, that is it about the king or is it about picking up material? It just so happens that the rook, which would have been in theory useful on the c-file, is a tactical liability. So it seems to be, but that's what a lot of tactics are about, you know, picking up seemingly totally insignificant details and they become significant, you know, in the forcing lines, and so it has become significant here to stop Rook G1 working. So yeah, I think you've got to have a keen eye for forcing sequences here to make sure, you know, you've got something against Rook G1. But as in the game, G4, and then it was just all over. So I hope you got something from this King's Indian game. Have a look at my 5-minute King's Indian game recently as well, which I called, you know, a beautifully flowing King's Indian. So yeah, right, comments or questions on YouTube, and I might look at Alex's game soon. Okay, thanks very much.